UK Health Secretary Matt Hancock is facing a growing backlash over his claim that NHS workers are using too much PPE, with one doctor's leader saying that the failure to provide adequate supplies was a shocking indictment of the government's response to the coronavirus outbreak. "We are getting the PPE out there," Matt Hancock yesterday. Followed by his answer to the supplementary. "It's a detailed plan set out in public both so that we can encourage more suppliers to come and replenish the stockpile." Crude translation: "We regret any inconvenience the sudden cabin movement might have caused. This is due to periodic air pockets we encountered. There's no reason to become alarmed and we hope you enjoy the rest of your flight. By the way, is there anyone on board who knows how to fly a plane? I mean, we're at the point where some of us are being asked to wash single-use items to reuse again. In critical care. Somewhere down the line, this is fucked up and I, as a nurse, and my colleagues are going to pay for it. We're wearing the same gear for 3 to 5 hours at a time and that's probably too long for comfort, but it saves a little bit of gear, and once you're used to feeling entirely soaking wet and your face is used to the indentation of the mask that probably doesn't fit 'cause those ones can't be bought anymore, then it's fine." So basically, fuck Matt Hancock. A fucking politician is passing judgment on the use of PPE by medical professionals? Hubris really is as revolting a character flaw as any person can exhibit. Just reposting this here from March 27 as it seems to have disappeared off the radar. https://www.theguardian.com/world/2020/mar/27/ advice on protective gear for NHS staff was rejected owing to cost. Salient points. The government commissioned an advisory committee to advise on PPE stockpiling for a pandemic such as this. This advice was released in 2016, including a recommendation to stockpile eye protection, and was apparently collated at least in part by medics and scientists. In 2017, the government had decided that a subsequent internal health economic assessment found a very large incremental cost of adding in eye protection with a very low likelihood of cost benefit based on standard thresholds. The government asked the committee to reconsider its recommendations in light of this. By January 2018, the committee had amended their recommendations to diminish the necessity for eye protection. TLDR, government asks scientists what PPE to stockpile for pandemic. Scientists say, "Oh, stockpile X." Government says, "That's too expensive, tell us something else." Scientists say, "Okay, just stockpile Y then." With the current lack of transparency around this, it's impossible to say for sure whether the savings made by amending the stockpiling plan are still outweighing the current total cost of desperately buying PPE in a global crisis, the cost of replacing ill and dead healthcare staff, and the cost of the PR and HR work surrounding it all. I think it's fair to say they might at least be comparable, and that the prior cost-benefit analysis was misguided or outright falsified. Of course, this ignores any moral and ethical obligation the government has. Will we ever see this investigated? Has anyone had any deeper visibility into this? Apologies for bullet point formatting. Pasted this from a duplicate elsewhere and Markdown is too shit to cope. In my state of Mississippi, a doctor was just fired for recommending the staff have better protection. A frontline doctor. Dismissed during a pandemic. 10 years of Tory government and nothing is their fault. It's Labour's fault, but they haven't been in power for 10 years. It's the EU's fault, but we've left the EU now. Oh fuck, let's blame the NHS instead. I remember listening to the briefing yesterday and Matt Hancock saying that we're setting out plans for when nurses need to wear PPE and when nurses don't. Blaming nurses for using too much PPE. I was watching in kind of astonishment that he was basically suggesting that the nurses were using too much PPE. The UK don't care. They will vote Tory next election and give them an even bigger majority despite their past record with the NHS and cutting your services. Does any country currently have enough protective equipment for their medical staff? I'm not NHS but private sector nursing home in a managerial position. So second-class frontline. Sadly, I found some of my team not using gloves for other tasks just from fear of not having enough for COVID patients. I assured them we do have enough, we are the lucky ones, mainly due to our planning we always have a 10% surplus, and have begged them never to place themselves at risk like that again. My team are highly educated and so dedicated, they should never feel they have to risk themselves just to save PPE, it should always be available. I now have a live feedstock take audit to reassure them. If an unfounded fear can make people panic in reducing their PPE use, I cannot imagine anyone in this position just wasting it. We are all very much aware that a flimsy bit of plastic and paper is all that protects us. We just wouldn't waste that vital resource. You wouldn't send an army in with no guns or ammo or protection. Please stop sending NHS and community carers in blind. Matt Hancock seems to live up to the cock part of his name. He should be forced to work on the front line of an ICU with just a garbage bag and a paper towel. It was such a tone-deaf thing to say. Plus, it feels suspiciously like a government minister trying to shift the blame onto the front-line workers busting a gut to keep people alive. I'm not surprised by the shamelessness of it, and I'm sad to say that the government's attempt to turn COVID into its ongoing culture war has begun. No one will remember the Conservatives' callousness towards the NHS come election time. They'll just remember clapping themselves on the back and poor sick old Boris. He should volunteer at hospital for a day. I always love when people who have no education in a field, nor work experience come into a position of power over and subsequently tell the people who do and have to deal with those things for years and decades that they are doing it wrong. This to me is the worst thing about modern politics, that professional politicians lack any in-field education to even properly assess the information they are being given by their experts. To the point that they are completely pointless to have that job. If it gets so condensed or pre-chewed that someone who has no idea why they are being told things can make decisions, why have them in the first place? No, you can't decide in any sector just because you have an econ and a pol-sci degree. It's just not reasonable. That's how PPE works. You use it for a minute or two and then throw it away. Dietary workers who distribute food to isolation patients do it constantly. You waste a ton of it. I fucking hate these desk jockeys that think they know more than those on the front lines. The best PPE we have received at my practice has been donated by a local non-medical firm. I will freely admit that as a GP I have not been on the front line. However, a friend, younger and fitter than me, who works at a nearby practice has just been discharged from hospital after a week with COVID. Hancock has lied, and lied again about PPE. As a result of his failures, people have died. Using too much PPE. So trash bags and using the same mask every shift is considered too much PPE. The fuck do you want them to use then? I imagine BJ will have a few things to say once he gets out of the ICU. Bring Matt Hancock into a COVID ward. He doesn't need no PPE, his superior immune system will prevail in short order. My wife works in a care home with elderly dementia patients. The other night the care home owner told them they are going through face masks too quickly and locked the rest of them away in his cupboard. So when my wife arrived for her night shift none of the staff were able to access it, so they had to go without that night. I'm sure that not legal during a pandemic. Only in politics do people who have no formal background in a subject matter, get placed into positions of high influence. Even rising to head departments or cabinet positions, like healthcare. Without a comprehensive understanding of medicine. This has never made any sense to me.